皆様こんばんは。今週も始まりましたCardano Radio。いかがお過ごしでしょうか。いや本当にもうなんかまた1週間経ったのっていうぐらいね早いですね。そして今クリプト業界でもいろんな動きが出てきてます。Cardanoの方でもねいろいろともうチャールズもいろんなところで引っ張りだこになってきておりますけども、今日はね、最近ずっとね、マティアスに出てもらっておりますけども、今日はね彼の最終回ということでね、もうみっちりたっぷりねもう15分という枠を超えてねいっぱいいろんな話をしていきたいと思いますのでね、ここで読んでみたいと思います。 Alright, thank you for coming back to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yep, my pleasure.
Good.
So, yeah.
Where are we today? Where do you want to start actually?
Okay, well, we can talk about, since, in the past episodes, we were trying to talk about the nodes and, we never got there because we kind of got, detoured in different directions. So I was thinking, you can talk about Amaru and stuff and we can have a discussion about the other possibilities and things like that. And I think that's going to wrap everything up.
Yeah, okay. Let's go there first.
Yep.
Because indeed, we've been funded with Amaru now for a second time.
Yeah.
For a longer period too, which is interesting because last time it was really for 6 months. In practice, it was really for 3 months because it took us a bit of time to establish everything we needed for the withdrawal. So now this time we have a full year almost, which includes a lot of things. Just give me a minute. The cat wants to go out.
Okay. So, the cat is trying to go out right now, so I will try to keep this place going on for the moment. Let's see how... Okay, we're back?
Okay, sorry.
No problem, the cat is out. Congratulations.
We have
carry on.
We have a little doorbell ring, so if I didn't get him out, he would just keep on ringing.
Okay.
So...
All right. Yeah.
So now we are there for a full year, and I've been having discussion with people. There is something I noticed that people did not really realize is I guess, well, it was a lengthy proposal, so maybe it didn't inspire as much. But out of the whole budget we got, about 1/3 of that budget is really going to the core team, which means people working directly on the Amaru components. And then the rest of the budget is really about creating an ecosystem around the project. That means having tools integrated with this. That means having events organized, like the Node Diversity Workshop that's happening in June in Porto. That means also having people looking at not only Amaru, but Cardano as a whole network. In terms of testing, we've now hired a white hacker actually to try to challenge a bit the Ouroboros assumptions and the security of the network and see if we can find anything that's wrong before an attacker would find them. And so all those efforts benefits not only Amaru but like the whole ecosystem. And our intent is really to try to both get people from the community that we have good relationship with and that we want to work with, to get them on the project to some extent, and also to get people from outside of the ecosystem to join in, because now we have this new Rust entry point. That means we can tap into a completely different category of developers, because Haskell, it has quite a niche vibe already, right? Quite a niche community, and on top of that, the Haskell community is very polarized between Jews that hate crypto and that will never touch it, and Jews that don't. And for those that don't, almost everyone has already worked or is already working at IOG. So that's like it's almost just the same person talking to each other. And at some point when you talk to someone in the Haskell community, you're like, oh yeah, you worked at IOG from like this time to this time. Oh, me too. And you realize everyone's been through that because, well, when you do Haskell, there is not many companies that really, hire at large. And if you are crypto, into crypto, then the choice is even less. So with Rust, we hope we can now get new people in. And that doesn't necessarily mean getting people to work on the Amaru protocol and on the on the Cardano protocol on the Amaru implementation, because that's usually way too specific. Like the amount of context you need in order to do that is huge. But something like, hey, we need a new chain indexer, or we need a new, in-browser process that uses the WASM build from Amaru to create a, light client node. Why not? You don't really need the whole context of building a blockchain for that. You just need to be able to use Amaru. And so that's kind of now the process we're starting, because Amaru is finalizing. We're getting to the point where now it's like, we've entered this paranoid era where it's like, we've built stuff. Did we build the right stuff? and the level of confidence you want to reach here to make sure that you have built the exact same behavior as the Haskell node. It is what is getting very time consuming and very exhausting, because you keep on wondering, okay, but what if this thing is different now? Okay, let's add a few tests there. Let's make sure we can control so this particular state transition, and let's add simulation over there. And so one effort we want to do as part of that is, and that was kind of, we had this idea a long time ago, and Clark Alesna from the SAIC team in Philippines, right? They've built this dashboard of comparing the Bluetooth virtual machine implementation across different languages, because now we have one in Haskell, we have one in Rust, in Go, in Zig, in many languages. And so he did some kind of little benchmark comparisons using the conformance test from, and not only the conformance test, but like some of the tests that the Bluetooth team had initially, and kind of build this little website comparing that. And we want that basically, but at the scale of nodes, right? To say we have a whole dashboard where you can see all those different nodes implementations, all the tests that they pass or not against the conformance test suite, the benchmarks possibly on some aspects, like the VM, like the block ingestion time, which will be like, okay, how fast can you ingest blocks irrespective of the network? And it's that kind of measure your ledger implementation, right? And all kind of things like that, just compiled and centralized in a single place, where you can go and see, okay, I have all those known implementations side by side. Now I can properly kind of compare them, but also make sure that they are all conformant to the same specs, and more than specs, to the same test. And for now, we have a rather extensive test suite with Amaru, which we are making Rust agnostic. It's already partially Rust agnostic, meaning that anyone can run those tests even if you are not building a Rust implementation, because the test data, they are in a format that is just not Rust, right? And so nice to building a pipeline for the Rust, that means Amaru here, and also the Haskell node, so that we can collect results from both, compare them and publish them. And obviously make the platform available to others, so that, hey, you have a Go implementation or a Zig implementation, you want to add your node to the pipeline so that it get tested through all those tests. Go ahead, and now you want to add also more tests because you've also been doing tests on your side. Well, you can also do that and contribute to the whole platform. And so something like that, when you think about it, is completely independent from Amaru, right? But this is the kind of thing that now gets funded through our treasury budget, because that was exactly part of that budget. We said we want that. That's useful to us because that helps us to make sure we are conformant with the Haskell node. But that has also a much bigger purpose and much bigger scope than just Amaru. It should become, a bit the, is my node ready, or how good is this node implementation with regard to the protocol specification. Oh yeah, that's a lot to unpack perhaps, but we are quite glad that we are now getting started with that, and we had a few workshops already on, okay, we have all those things we want to do, The vast majority of them, we won't be doing them directly. So now we have to find relevant people in the ecosystem that can tackle those different tasks. And so we started talking to a few people, and we'll have more conversation coming. So yeah, really trying to build this ecosystem around the project, and that's very exciting. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. I mean, it's kind of different because from getting funded from the Catalyst and from the government action, it's totally different things. But looking at the there's the different nodes that are trying to get implemented right now, including Dingo and stuff. And all the users, all the people in the ecosystem, the ADA card holders, there's two sides to the story, because they're talking about liquidation, not enough money is going to the DeFi and this and that, and people are saying that this is not a time to be making more technology improvement, and too much money is going to that. But in my perspective, I think node diversity is a must, because last year, you remember when that I don't know if I should call it a virus happened, but we were lucky enough that some nodes were running in the prior versions, so that kind of saved Cardano. And if that didn't happen, then probably Cardano would have stopped, and we could not have keep the "it doesn't stop" theory. So I was wondering what you think about that. What people are talking about, if you can just kind of give me a little bit of an idea of what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously on one side of the fence, right? Because I do strongly believe that the node diversity is important. And like at the center of the debate there, we need diversity in the node implementations because we need diversity in who controls the software. And that means decentralization of control and power again, which is the very much core of the blockchain. But the conversation really does not stop there. Like that is just, I would say, the ideological argument, and you can buy or not into that. You can also say, well, now it's good to have only one node because that means there is only, it's easier to coordinate the roadmap evolutions and so on. And although I disagree with that version 2, and I could go on that, there is another aspect to node diversity that is not mentioned that much. And that's possibly because we just say, we call it node diversity, where we should call it ecosystem diversity, really.
Yeah.
Because as you build a node, you build also the ecosystem around it. And it's not just there is now a piece of software that runs that's a little different from the one that was before, because you also have now tools and other projects, services that becomes possible and available because you have a very strong foundation in a particular language. Just like the amount of things you have to build in order to build a node is huge. And if you do it right, at the end, you're gonna have a completely SDK, a full SDK that covers every single part of the protocol. And by SDK, I mean software development kit, which means a set of libraries that people can use to build more programs and software with that. So, if you're committing to a node implementation, you really end up with all those little building blocks, plus possibly new interfaces that people can use to build more advanced services and complete the ecosystem around that. So that is often not quite discussed. And one of the reasons, and I'm quite convinced of that, there is like no doubts for having there for long enough. And one of the reasons we've been struggling to getting more and more builders on Cardano is really because of this Haskell core, right? When you look at the Haskell, the size of the Haskell community, we're talking about 0.1% of the developers worldwide. 0.1%. And I think that's even an overestimate. If you take Rust and Go already, you are at 15% in both. So that is like more than 300 times, the size of the Haskell community. So of course, that doesn't mean you're suddenly going to have 300 times more developers. But it will certainly help to get a few more. And now if you also expand that to, for example, Java, right? or Scala, or like the JVM in general. Now you also have more developers than what you have in Rust and Go combined. There's just so as or like JavaScript and all those other languages. Like the more we have those building blocks, the more you kind of maximizes your chances of someone getting interested and having the right tools to build what they want to do. Of course, with today, you could argue that you don't necessarily need to be super proficient in the language anymore. You can just pick whatever language is the best documented. And to be fair, Haskell is getting pretty good with AI. I've been surprised at times by how good the few LLMs can do with Haskell, mostly because the compiler is very picky. The language is statically typed, it has strong typing, so all that helps LLMs or agents that are also interacting with tools to produce better code. Whereas in JavaScript, I'm always very disappointed and always wondering if it's just that the language is not meant very well for agentic AI, or if it's just that the vast majority of the data they train on is just horrible, which could also be the case in JavaScript, I don't know. But yeah, so that's an argument. But still, if you do have good base libraries to use, even your AI agent is going to have a much easier time to generate, the right programs. And I'm not saying Haskell libraries are not good, because they've been battle tested over many years, but they've also accumulated a lot of technical debts. If you take the Haskell code base now, it has to manage the Byron era, the Shelley era, Allegra, Mari, Alonso, Babbage. So that's like 8+ years of history that it has to go through. And that means every single time we do that, there is a little bit of complexity that's get added to the code base. And the consensus layer is also equally more complex because it is actually doing more than what it is asked to do. In terms of its capability, like technically the consensus we have today, the implementations can handle multiple protocols. It could handle multiple versions of Ouroboros. In practice, it's not really the case, even though we had technically a few transitions through different versions of Ouroboros, but they were very, very similar. And so nodes that take a slightly different approach to that, or that come later, they can kind of look at the full picture from the start and build something that's a bit more coherent and less noisy, you would say, from the start, because you don't have to organically evolve the code base over time. And that's a much, much easier position to be in. So it's much easier to arrive at a more coherent and consistent SDK when you do that than doing it over many years. With also the research work in the middle, that's sometimes you try stuff, doesn't work, so you partially revert it and you try something else, and the whole governance story on Cardano was a lot of that. There was a lot of let's try that, let's try that, and eventually you converge to a solutions. But in the meantime, you've kind of altered the code base partially each time. Plus, people moving in and out of a project, you always get new ways of doing things. So all that means that you accumulate a debt that is much harder to tackle on an existing code base than when you start on a new one, and where you have the freedom to redesign things and to also learn from past mistakes, which is hopefully what we do with Amaru, and I'm pretty convinced that this is also what's happening with other implementations. That's why node diversity is important, and perhaps it's good that we start calling that ecosystem diversity to really reflect on what's actually happening. It's not just about the node, it's about everything that the node enables around it.
Yeah, true. I really agree with you. I mean, the more options and the more libraries it has, and if the language is different, then I think they'll, like you said, I mean, Haskell has over exaggerated, you said about 0.1%, but with Java, and you said what else, not Zig, what was it, Rust, with Rust, then there's more popularity in there, so probably more diversity and more programmers dive in, and I think the ecosystem will not only increase with people but evolve, so Cardano itself will go in a good direction.
totally. And that's the whole decentralization game. It's really having sometimes you would say redundant or duplicated efforts, but in practice they are really just working in different ecosystems. And yeah, okay, maybe you have a tool that exists in this particular language, but if no one is ready to use it because they're not familiar with the language, or you're not really solving their problem, so they might as well build a tool in their language that does something very similar. That's what we've seen, for example, with the Bluetooth VM. It is useful to have a virtual machine implementation in your language because that's the entry point to smart contracts tooling. If you write a smart contract and you can't evaluate that contract, you can't check if your script is running or not, you can't measure the execution units, like you are really not in a good spot to keep developing smart contracts. Even if you can use then tools like Aiken, for example, that gives you a command line tool to do those things, it's still much easier if your own language has native support for those primitives. And the virtual machine in Bluetooth is rather simple piece. At least the machine itself, the evaluator, it's a rather small and succinct things. And then you have all the built-ins, which is where things get more complicated because we have 250 plus built-ins. Some needed some esoteric crypto. So it can get a bit cumbersome to implement in full. And the cost models are not super easy to get right as well. But it is useful to have an implementation of the VM in every languages, and it's not redundant to have one. Like you can't tell someone, oh no, don't build one in Java because we have one in Rust. Like yeah, okay, you can use the one from Rust, and that's what's has been happening in the past. They were using a what we call foreign function interface from Java to use the Rust version that was exported to WASM. So there was like the whole pipeline to be able to use the Rust VM in Java, which adds complexity to the build, which adds slowness, which adds interactions, and sometimes also obfuscates some errors that could be better if you just had a Java virtual machine to begin with. And so yeah, it's a natural evolution of things. You start by using what exists, wrapping them into tools and through interfaces, and then as it becomes more and more prominent in your language, you just go with a native implementation. And so it's only natural that the kind of the ultimate boss of that is the node, right? Once you've built enough of those little pieces, like okay, you've got code for serializing, deserializing entities, you've got the virtual machine, you've got somewhat a partial ledger that's validating rules, you've got a chain indexer, you've got a networking interface, like I almost got a node, right? So now it's just about putting all those pieces together, adding some consensus to it, and then spending years making sure that you have built the right things. But yeah, that's kind of the natural path and evolution. So people should not be surprised. And I think it's even a good sign. If you see someone that's ready to build a node, or actually claims to be, and if their claim is actually legit, of course, that's usually a good sign that this particular ecosystem is now advanced enough that it can support rather complex use cases. And so, that means today we can probably go and see large businesses and tell them, yes, if you build in Rust or Go or TypeScript, well, Cardano, I have a good case for you. We have good tools there. Making that claim in Python, for example, it's much harder because, as you can see, the Python ecosystem doesn't have a VM. It doesn't have the necessary building blocks to interact with the network directly. It doesn't have a node implementation in the pipeline, which kind of all of that is a sign that it's less advanced as those other ecosystem. And that's probably just because there are less people in the Python side that are pushing for it on Cardano. But not saying it's a problem in itself, it's just the reality, right? So if someone were coming to us saying, I do Python, we'll tell them, well, maybe pick a different language because you're going to have a hard time with Python on Cardano. Just the way things are.
Yeah, true. So with your knowledge or your knowledge base, basically, there's Amaru and Dingo, and recently that I found out about was I did a X Spaces just a while back, just bringing Cardano as a topic in the Japanese community, And was it Geronimo, or I forgot the name of the node with the TypeScript? Is it that works in the browser? Geronimo. Yeah. He came on, and most of the listeners was in Japanese, but he was talking and was like telling us about it too. And I really didn't know too much about it, so it was like nice info for me, because that made me realize again that there's more diversity. Which I know that the project has been going on for a while, but that's kind of good news for the Cardano ecosystem, I think. People are building a lot.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, the kind of the connection kind of broke up. Yeah, you go ahead. I kind of like stopped you in the middle.
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying there is even more than that, right? I think those are the three now known one because they have been making treasury withdrawals. But there is also a now not so active anymore, but a C++ implementation which started as Daedalus Turbo, right? And I think everyone around Catalyst remembers that event. And a lot of people kind of laughed at them at first. But they were actually building stuff like crazy and building good stuff, really. And they've got to the point where instead of just building a Daedalus backend, they went all the way through building all the different components to the point where they were even considering building a full node. And now we have a lot of different C++ pieces that are pretty well done. There is both Scala and Java implementations of those pieces. I think the Scala one is definitely quite advanced, and so far they are taking this angle of they want to build a complete tooling for the Java Scala ecosystem, where you can have sort of a complete development environment that can do everything that you would do with a normal blockchain if you were if you were interacting with mainnet, which means running your transaction through all the ledger validations, simulating AUTXO executions, evaluating scripts, connecting to the networks and so on. And again, once you've got all those pieces, you realize that building a node is not that far away. Then you have also the Zig effort that I think you are spearheading nowadays. Which is also slowly I think getting there. Python is arguably getting a bit better too, and we have Elder Millennial that is gone like fully ballistic on AI agentic setup, really trying to show people how you should do AI, which is very interesting. And I'm following his journey along the way. I'm not sure why he picked Python, possibly because he's quite familiar with it, but I think he's just added some difficulty to himself. So yeah, a lot of different choices to pick from, actually.
So there are a lot of node implements, and also people aiming to go for the full node, the whole thing. But starting from the follower, going to the node implements, and that is very hard. But that's I think achievable. But when you're really going to the full node depth, all the debugging and everything, the building might not take so much time, but the research and the debugging and clearing all the bugs one by one, that's going to take a whole of a lot of time, right?
Yeah. And it's really sort of this sentiment where it's very easy to get a block from the network, right? To build a chain indexer, you can do that possibly nowadays in a few days, weeks. And you think, I've got a program that can ingest blocks from the network that can give me some sort of state that resembles the ledger state, right? But it's not exactly the ledger state. And getting to this exactly point is what takes most of the time. And really it's weeks versus years, because every single thing that can go wrong needs to be checked. And if you just look at the amount of objects or entities we can have in a block, that's about 100 of them. You've got transaction, of course, but in transaction, you've got certificates, you've got votes, you've got governance proposal, you've got assets, you've got inputs, outputs, reference inputs, collateral outputs. And then you go outside of that, you have pool that have metadata, that have also their own certificates. And you take just all that, you look at how are they serialized at the binary level, how they are turned to bytes. And And already in there, the realm of possibilities of things that can go wrong is huge. And it's not like it's a false problem, because that's exactly what happened in last November, right? The attack that happened was really that some of the decentralization code that was interpreting bytes into stake pool certificates was altered, unfortunately, and changed in a way that just created a bug into two different nodes implementation. So even in the Haskell nodes itself, from a version to another, you can introduce problems like that. So imagine between two implementations now, and that's not even talking about ledger rules, ledger states, or consensus here. It's just like turning entities to bytes and bytes to objects in the particular language runtime. Yeah. So that's like the bare minimum you can do, and you can tolerate mistakes like that when you are building a chain indexer, because if your chain indexer is slightly more flexible than the node itself and maybe accept wrong encoding, that's fine, because the encoding will always be produced anyway by a valid node. But if you're building a node, you need to make sure that you fail for the same reason and you succeed for the same reasons. So if I don't know, the Haskell node expects all the keys in a particular transaction maps to be ordered alphabetically, and if you don't enforce that, it might be okay for most of the time, because it happens that it's always ordered alphabetically. And one day someone submits a transaction that is not ordered alphabetically, and now you have one node that will reject the transaction, one that will accept it, just because they don't decode it the same way. And that is bad. You need to make sure that the behavior there is the exact same. And not only that, but that it remains the same across evolution, which means you need to have good testing in place that you can reproduce and you can rerun on all implementations every time. So we are kind of back to the thing that I was mentioning earlier. Having this conformance across all the nodes is extremely important. And here, the more node we add to the mix, the better it becomes. Because it's already complicated to get it right between two nodes, but if we manage to get it right between three nodes, because everyone's gonna do slightly differently, they're gonna ask, people are gonna experiment in different ways, implement things with different tools, they're gonna bump into different issues. And if we manage to arrive at a point where we have a whole set of tests we can all pass, and when looking at all the implementations, there is no way we find discrepancies, then we probably have a strong argument. And if we can do that for 4, 5, 6 nodes, then the security argument becomes more and more robust. And something like what happened in November would not have happened, because maybe the Haskell node didn't code it in their test, but it would have been 3 other node implementation that said, well, wait, here you have a problem, because now these things here is now you consider that now valid, where we do consider it invalid. So that signaling between implementation is important, and getting there is the path that is the most hard. But once we are there, we have arguably one of the strongest network that can be.
All right, that sounds good. Can you give me like a roadmap of 2026, 2027, and as much, there's probably some things you might not be able to say, but just a simple, vision for Amaru that the listeners would like to hear.
Okay. So our immediate plan now is to get the relay version of Amaru out as soon as possible, which means next month.
Well, that's very quick.
I mean, it's not like we haven't been working on that for a while now,
of course,
And so we had a bit of a delay because we had to rebuild our networking stack, which kind of took us 3-4 months extra time compared to our original plan. But now that this is done, we are, as I said, entering this paranoiac phase where, okay, we've built that, is it the right thing? So we still want to have the relay out as soon as possible, so people can try it and can tell us how bad it is, so that we can improve it, of course. And also because we need to monitor the relay now in a deployed setup to see, if it's stable resource-wise, if it's behaving correctly, if the monitoring and the observability that we have in place is enough that people can make sense of what's happening in the node. So that's the immediate thing. Alongside that, and while this is happening, we are hardening the node because we have way more areas we still want to deeply test. And so that means there is this website / dashboard / shared build pipeline that we're working on. At the same time, there is also 2 efforts that we've started, which are one that is really looking at performances and on the Amaru side, and one, as I said, which is doing white hacking for Amaru, but Cardano as a whole. We're starting with the Cardano bits, so that's the person we have there is first getting context into Ouroboros, Cardano, the node implementations in Haskell, and then we'll try to reproduce some of the attack vectors that are described in the research paper, for example. To see if the nodes and the network is indeed resilient to that. And that is combined with the effort we've started with Antithesis, which is a testing platform that gives you ways to do a fully reproducible test at the operating system level. Like you can control every single allocation, for example, that happens during a process execution. So that if something fails, then you have a completely reproducible sequence really at the operating system level that you can redo to check, to the point of failures, what exactly happened. Was it because there was a network issue? Was it because the system failed for some reason? And with that whole thing, you can inject faults at different places to simulate, for example, I don't know, a bit flipping because a proton just traversed the file system and created some weird shit that never happens in practice, except this, 1 in a million time. But this is the kind of testing we are after, right?
Yeah.
So I would say all that is the first 2 quarters of 2026. And the block production side of things, it's not that we don't want to do it, but it's just that like if you have a stable relay, getting from a relay to a block producing node is relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
Because a relay needs to be able to propagate transaction, needs to be able to validate blocks, needs to be able to follow the leader schedule. So pretty much do everything that a block producer does, except producing blocks. And producing blocks is nothing more complicated than take a chunk of the transactions I have in my main pool, put them in the block, sign the block, diffuse the block. And we don't want to be producing blocks until we have the very strong confidence that the blocks we are producing and the nodes we have is 100% matching the Haskell behavior. And that means we want to have a certain amount of time where it first runs as a relay, so that we don't put the network at risk. Because we know very much, and we've seen that, for example, with Aiken back in the days, we know very much that if we say people, okay, there is block production capabilities in that node, but don't use them now, people are still going to use them, right? When we released Aiken initially, we said, it's an alpha version, don't use it in production. On the next day, there were contracts on mainnet using Aiken. So if you make it a possibility, people will use it.
True.
And we want first to convince ourselves that we're not putting the network at risk by doing that. And we are pretty hard people to convince. Yeah, that's the first kind of half of the year. After the first half, there is really questions about the evolution of Cardano. The main item in line, obviously, is Leos. Which is why in early June we are having this new diversity workshop that's being focused on Leos. Where the goal is really now to discuss with the Leos team at IOG, plus the other node implementations, where exactly is our target. Because Leos is still not fully finalized as a design. And I do think it will never be finalized until we start really implementing it drastically. Because that's the life of designing something like that. You need also an implementations to tell you where the design has gaps and holes. So there is an implementation of Leos that has started, but it's mostly a simulation. So starting from now, and I think couple of weeks ago even, I know they started ramping up the implementations too. And so in June will be a good moment to touch base and say, okay, where are we at? Where are we going? And now it's time for us also on the Amaru side to be looking at that a bit more closely. There is also a hard fork that's coming in June. That's being planned, although it should be on the testnet first. But we need to be supporting that hard fork, obviously. It should be relatively simple because it's mostly focused on Bluetooth additions. There is possibly small stuff also on the ledger, but for us it should be okay. And then the rest of the year is really about that, right? It's layers. It is hardening the nodes and getting to the point where we are confident that we can finally release the block producer into the wild and getting a bit of stake market, let's say, on Cardano. Not too much. It's kind of a bit counterintuitive, but we need the project and the node to be successful, but not that much that it becomes too successful too quick. And I don't want to sound overconfident saying that, but we are also quite proud of the tool we're building, and so we have to be also careful that if it's too good and it gets too much adoption, it also becomes a risk, and we are just shifting the balance in the wrong direction. So I always say, like, with 2 nodes, the ideal distribution is 50-50. With 3 nodes, it's 33%, and so on. So hopefully Dingo will also arrive roughly at the same time, which means that we can possibly aim for maybe 60% initially as a stake distribution across those nodes. I do know some SPOs that are interested in running multiple nodes implementations too, so that they have also diversity in their own setups. So I think it will be a lot of that for the second half of the year while we're working on layers in the background and testing things out. It will be a lot of monitoring and talking to SPOs and making sure that we have possibly also the right level of monitoring and tooling around the nodes. Because for a lot of SPOs, it's not just about running a node, it's also all the administration of that node, right? They need to vote on governance proposals, they need to update their KSPs, they need to sign transactions, they need some time to update their metadata. So all these little tools, right now SPOs use a variety of tools, some that come from the guild operators, for example, via CNCLI. Some uses also tools from Andrew Westberg and Martin to do signing and either schedule predictions, things like that. But those are all kind of tools we might want to integrate directly in Amaru, so that people have everything in one place instead of having to go and fetch multiple tools. So I think it will be mostly that ironing out the implementations, making sure that we have not only a working node, but a node that people enjoy using. While in the background there is this layers happening. We have also a few other items on there, but that will really depend on where the project are at. That, for example, is Starstream. We were in touch with Sebastian for quite a while, and since they are also building Starstream in Rust, there is some synergies that are possible, and it sounds, at least at the time, it sounded easier to experiment with Starstream because it's a completely new virtual machine on the UTXO model. It's slightly easier to add on top of the Amaru code base than on top of the Haskell code base. But that will highly depend on where they are at by that time. Which is why even in our budget we had some kind of question mark on that, like, with budget provision for it. We'll see if it happens or not. And if it doesn't happen, we have also other efforts in the pipeline we want to look at, mostly around layer 2s. I think there is a lot to be done with layer 2s in 2026. In particular with the Bitcoin ecosystem. And as you see, all those bridges happening, they need infrastructure supporting that. And for a bridge, you do not want to be relying on some kind of indexer that can be, possibly withholding data or having discrepancies in the data. You want to be trusting a node that is actually validating the chain, which means a full node. And that means in many setups, with Amaru, being drastically less resource demanding than the Haskell node, it becomes a good candidate for also being embedded in an L2 infrastructure. So yeah, that's kind of the roadmap for us, but that's exactly what we have in the budget proposal. So it shouldn't be too surprising. I think we've been pretty transparent and communicative about that plan. It's just that, of course, some efforts depends not only on us, but depends on also other projects. So we will adapt and adjust as time passes.
Okay, sounds great. A lot of things that's going to go on your side. Okay, whoa, that was a nice long episode. Thank you very much. I am Matthias. And one more thing, what Cardano Radio does is we bring guests on the show, and the guests introduce us to a new guest. And I was wondering if you can introduce us to a new guest.
Yeah. Well, since we're also talking about node diversity a bit and ecosystem diversity, I would recommend talking to Alex Nemish, who is on top of the Scalus effort on the Scala side. He started, I think, working at IO a long time ago. He was initially working on Marlow, and then he kind of went build his own company called Lenter. And they've been doing all kind of things, smart contract related. Scalus is one of them. It's really getting to a point where, they have, I think, very nice ecosystem. I'm almost jealous sometimes of all the things that they've done with Scalus. And it looks really, really, really amazing. And it's a very small team. It's Alex and his team. I think they are like 3 or 4, but don't quote me on that. And they are very, very capable, very knowledgeable as well, and also agreeable persons. So I would definitely recommend having him for a chat. Alexander Nemish.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll, try to set something up on Discord so we can pick up dates. So, listeners keep in touch, and, we'll have him on the show, hopefully. Okay, let me just tell my Japanese listeners real quick. はい、皆さん、そういうことで今日はすごかったですね。なんともう45分。もう過去最高ですよ、本当に。ね、今日もマティアスに来ていただいて、もうこれ最終回なんですけどね、また素晴らしいゲストをね、紹介していただいたので、またね、皆さん次週もチェックアウトしていただきたいと思います。本当にありがとうございました。Alright, thank you very much for coming back. It's kind of sad it's going to be the last episode for this time, but I would definitely, I hope I can bring you back on the show again. So thanks a lot for coming.
And thanks a lot for having me once again. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck with the Amaru project, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hydra for scaling, Mithril for speed, smart contracts later, serving the need. Millions of wallets, adoption and in play. Cardano grows stronger with each passing day. Governance voting, treasury flows. Chain hard fork, the community knows. DeFi's alive, liquidity streams. Cardano's building real world dreams. ADA, we rise on your wings. From blockchain roots to real world things. DeFi, governance, midnight align. Cardano's vision, the future defined. DJ for stability, Indigo's right. USDA coming just decentralized. Decks are trading, pools stay deep. Stake, delegate, rewards to keep. Midnight with us, protecting the right.